Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome back to a journey through Tarot de Marseille trumps, majors. And today I have a few fortune cards to share with you, a few wheel cards. And I have been lost in tarot books trying to make sense of this card. And you know, there are some really tricky cards in esoteric tarot. And then we go back to the Tarot de Marseille. And this one really has me stumped. Now, I don't have Visconti Forza. I don't have any of the earliest decks. The oldest deck that I have is the Fine della Torre, which is on the far left. And so I can't compare and contrast a little symbol that is in the Visconti decks with the animals that we see in the later decks. But I do want to talk about that. And I also do have the Buddha Tarot on the table, as well as the 1JJ Swiss and the Tarot of the Master as well too. So we'll have a look through a bunch of these cards and see if we can make sense of the wheel. And I was just glancing at Flournoy's book, and I am reminded of the nuances of French. This is La Roue de Fortune, not La Roue de la Fortune, which has a different nuance. And if you are familiar with the language, you might want to just sit with that. And I have, years back, I remember studying this card and thinking about Fortuna and the Greek goddess and the relationship between fortune and money and the fate that was bestowed by the goddess Fortuna, and how once upon a time our fortune was so closely linked to the cycles of nature and the wheel of the cosmic cycle to the climactic changes and are the changes of our material world. And I think sometimes with this card, we forget the connections among these layers of the wheel. The greater cosmic wheel, perhaps more of a dharmic wheel, and this inner wheel that we have. And I won't say that's an inner wheel, I mean a more personal wheel that perhaps we do have some free will and the ability to turn the handle. So there's a lot to think about in this card. And I think ultimately we all know that change is, and it is our response to change that at first is going to greatly affect what is happening in the near future. So yeah, this is quite the card. You'll also see some cards peeking out underneath, and I was having a look at comparing and contrasting the World card in some of these decks with what is going on in the Fortune card or the Wheel card. And you will see that if you want to, I don't want to jump ahead to the Wheel card yet, but there definitely is a significant correlation here. And in particular with the Fine della Torre, there's quite a statement that is made here in the 10th and the 21st key, with what looks like the figure on the top of the wheel somehow mastering the wheel. And that is, I don't know, it's kind of mind-blowing to me. And I can't say how glad I am that I've taken the time to go back and look more carefully at these cards. And I don't know. And I know the figure looks different. It looks more like Hermes, but to me, it looks more like an evolution of this figure in the World card. And it may be a stretch, but I'm going to begin to contemplate this. And we have another 10 cards in between for a long time for me to figure this out. But what is the relationship between the wheel in the Wheel of Fortune and the mandorla, or the wheel in the World card? And is the figure on the top of the wheel card the figure in the center of the World card? What have we learned? And why now do we choose the center of the wheel rather than the top of the wheel? And I feel like I'm answering my own question here. And I think this is a great realization that we don't need to be on top of the wheel. That if we are in the center of the wheel, this is the place of stillness and peace and equilibrium. But this 10th key, or this 10th arcanum, is very early in the journey of life. And so as humans, we have tremendous ego, and we have this notion that we want to, and we have some control over the turn of things. We have some control over change. And for sure, we do. I mean, our responses to various actions can make all the difference in the world. But just have a think about that, okay? And then in 10 weeks' time, I'll tell you where I'm at with that. Welcome, Dee. O Fortune, like the moon you are changeable, ever waxing, ever waning. Hateful, first life oppresses, and then soothes, playing with mental clarity. Poverty and power, it melts them like ice. Thank you. There are, so I want to go back. I mentioned, I want to talk about the tail and the ears. So if you have a Visconti Forza deck, Madrone, one of those decks, just have a look at the hint of, and it is not super easy to see, but we do see on the ascending side this donkey, the ears of the donkey. And in the older deck, there is a hint of those ears in the dark color in the diagram, as well as in the monkey figure that falls on the left side, which looks a little bit more human in these two decks here. There is a tail. Or vice versa, because sometimes the wheel is going in a different direction. And I wonder if these references have not changed so much. And this just makes me think about politics and how, and I don't know what it's like in the country where you live, but it's like one ass rises and the next donkey one donkey rises and the next monkey falls. And the circle goes on and on and on and repeats itself. And we all know how history repeats itself until, it takes a pretty great power, movement, releasing of ego to evoke change. And I don't know, I really want to get into this. I want to just look at the cards and look at the details of the cards and hope that the details of the cards will help me with my understanding and deepen my awareness of this card. But I just offer these opening contemplations for your thought. So this little deck is the Noble, obviously. And then the Dodal. And then the next deck that I have is the Jean-Pierre Payen, 1713. So these are all very close in time. And what does change as we move through it does vary from country to country, but what's on the bottom of the deck, the green becomes blue, generally speaking, and water becomes present in the card. So let's see here. I just want to read this comment. It's like Groundhog Day in the UK. Evolution seems to be at a standstill, maybe going backwards. Yeah. Groundhog Day. All right. So I think these little details and just thinking about some of these details can maybe help in seeing something. And most importantly, seeing something in a particular reading that you need to bring forward. And I'm starting at the bottom. And what does this wheel stand on? Why is it on a stand? And that might be something that, it appears that it's actually on a tree in this older deck. And we'll look at some others where the wheel is floating in the air, the wheel is suspended. And I kind of like that because it helps me. It reminds me that when I look at this card, I want to kind of think of greater wheel, the connection of all the wheels that are affecting everything. And then when I reflect on the personal small changes that I make, how that also turns the wheel and may turn the wheel in a way that is, what's the word? Like against the natural flow of the wheel. So I want to be mindful that the little changes I make move with the natural cycles of time. And your poem, your quotation at the beginning, Dee, reminds me of something I want to say here, and that is cycles. And our attention to cycles is so important in that, for example, if we choose to wax during the waxing moon and to hold back more during the waning moon, then we are in alignment with the natural flow of energy. And I have found the more energy I put into the lunar cycle, whether that is a morning intention or something more, the smoother things go. I must watch this movie again. I remember it being very, very funny. Okay. So in your card, in the deck that you're working with, is the ground stable? Obviously, if this wheel is on water, it is not stable and anything can happen. Very different than if it's on solid ground or if it's connected to an anchored tree. So that feels highly significant to me. Stability, interestingly, its engineering is a little better in some cards than others. And then, of course, you want to look to the use of color and what that might signify for you in a reading. For the most part, I think that the wheel tends to move counterclockwise as the astrological wheel moves counterclockwise. That leads me to believe that there was some understanding of the turn of the cosmos, the way the cosmos turns, in the way that the wheel turns. And you want to go back through your decks, and I know in some of the decks with the printing, there was a reversal of the direction, but this is something that may speak loudly to you for sure. Why the fall of the monkey and the rise of the ass? And that, I believe, was a much more common symbolism in the past than it is now. But I think if we look at, and I go back to politics, it certainly is relevant. The other piece here, and I just don't know. I need to go back and look at some contemporary iterations of the deck. The figure that is at the top is not fully full size, right? It's not a full size human. It's not a full size anything. It's a miniature version on its way to wanting to become something. And when I look at the figure on the top, I mean, in the Dodal here, they might be a similar size. I don't know, but I just, especially in this deck here, in the Noble, I get this sense of insignificance. And my moment at the top is quite insignificant. And so my response to my moment at the top matters greatly. And I feel that the more inflated the ego becomes at the top, the more severe the fall. And I don't know, it just, I want to honor that. And I was thinking of something else too. Do you remember, I know in Pinocchio grows a nose, but doesn't Pinocchio also grow a tail at some point? And it might not be in the story of Pinocchio. So when we lie, our nose grows. But I swear that in that story, he also became an ass. And I'm just thinking of this kind of mythology. And this is a card that reminds us how important integrity is to the turn of the wheel. And I can apply that sentence to my gardening, my farming, to all kinds of choices that will present here. And honestly, I prefer this older version of the card to some of the contemporary decks because I think it asks harder questions and is more pointed in its approach to how, I don't know, a reflection of the outer world. And with the outer world, I mean like the community at large or the nation and our inner world. And sometimes it takes a card like this to help us understand how much our inner wellness or chaos is reflected in the closer community or the nation or some other aspect of the larger. I am so very, very intrigued with this card. So intrigued. Okay. I was talking about a few cards that don't seem to have a stand. This is one. And this is this is one of the versions of, what is this? Oh, it's a Minciati deck. And here are the donkeys at the top. And man is falling and man is rising and man is crushed at the bottom. And this particular deck is 1775. So it was after the ones that I just showed you. And I wonder why or how the 4 figures became 3 figures in the tarot. And if somehow symbolically the 4th figure is represented elsewhere. All right. Paul Marteau calls the top figure the Sphinx, the shape of destiny, the unknown and the unknowable. Man aspires, but destiny is the rock in the road of evolution. And I'm sure you're aware that in the older decks as well too, there was a banner for each of the 4 figures. The one at the top was I reign. The one that was falling was I reigned, and the one that was rising was I will reign, and the one at the bottom was I have no connection to ruling or something like that. And those labels were also dropped. And I believe the figure at the bottom was an old man. So there was a connection to the seasons of life as well, too. And I just feel that this card is kind of so much more poignant and could get through something, could cut through and answer a question more pointedly than we see in some of the contemporary decks. So here is the Il Menengello Sopraffino, and I know there's a couple of Italian decks that you'll see this. So we have an angel on the top, and what looks like a fox or a wolf rising, and there is a flame or a fire above the handle on our left side of the card. And this really puts a whole other spin on things. Smoke and incense and is a powerful energy to help clear. And when I look at this card, it reminds me of why monks wear orange robes. In that, and the fox here is that we are never, and maybe we can apply this as well too, to an older, well, we can look here. We are never above, we never evolve from, we never, there's always an aspect of our lower energies that is with us. And so this angel at the top strives to constantly purify their energy. And maybe I can go back to what Marteau says and expand that there. But I really get something from this deck. And so if we want to, if we want the experience at the top to be more enduring, it needs to be one of tremendous integrity and pure intention. That fox will always be nipping at our ankles. That fox will always be teasing us, tricking us. And that angel will fly away. That angel does have wings. When I look at, okay, let's go back. I just want to look at the wing thing. And what you make of the wings. And because we do see possibly wings in many of these cards, or wings that are hidden by a cape. In a reading, particularly if the handle is coming into focus, I want to look at who is turning the handle. Yes, a sphinx would have wings. A sphinx would have wings. I want to go back and read that, what Marteau said again. The shape of destiny, the unknown and the unknowable. It sounds like, this quote feels like the attempt to reach the top 3 sephira on the tree of life. That supernal triangle is, generally speaking, unattainable. We can get as far as the 4th and the 5th sephira on the tree of life, and yet we continue to strive for those higher energies. It reminds me of that sort of intention. A sphinx would have wings. Yeah. What is the riddle of the sphinx? And is that part of the reason why the sphinx is on the top? And that is, we need to solve the riddle of the sphinx in order to stay at the top. Yes, very like that, but not when we are encumbered by a body. Yeah, and that is, see, the thing is with the physical body, if we're looking at the figure on the top as a king of sorts, that the physical body will weather and decay. And that really makes me think more of, a card such as in the Buddha Tarot or one of the other more spiritually based decks that looks at this as the wheel of life, the dharmic wheel. And yet, when I look at this particular card and the wings, that it's the wings that turn the wheel, and the cosmos that turns the wheel, and something greater that turns the wheel. So there seems to be this conflict between man wanting to turn the wheel and the sinking of man's wheel turning and the cosmos's wheel turning. And so, like I said earlier, I think we want to be aware of the cards on the right and the left near the handle, the direction the wheel is turning, to give us some information about control and surrender and what we are turning from and to, of course, in relation to into a question. The horn here that is emptying coins to the earth. That's sort of where I was starting with all of this, in that if we understand fortune as an interconnected web of cycles, then it encourages us to act accordingly with the cycles that we can affect. But I feel like when I look back and I think of the kinds of questions that people like to ask in readings and the nature of the tarot and fortune telling, historically there hasn't been a lot of sense of awareness, self-awareness, and self-empowerment. That's a very new thing. And for me, it's a very sad thing when I do live readings. Okay. Let's look at... I should have... Oh, I don't have it here. This is Tarot de Marseille, Pablo Robledo. And this creature has definitely changed shape. And I was really curious because I wanted to look at the one JJ Swiss, and maybe we should compare this one with this one. And this makes me think of there's a contemporary deck, the Anna K Tarot, that really seems to mimic a couple of these older decks. And I think it's unfortunate the way that the wheel, I mean, it's so pretty. I think of a deck such as the Wild Unknown, or the Lily White Tarot, or the Gaian Tarot. And I understand the change of the seasons and the Sabbats and all of that. But we lose something. Okay, so Fortune is blindfolded in this card and in this card. But it's really weird because the blindfold is a little bit high. It's almost like the blindfold covers the third eye, not the three-dimensional eyes. It's almost like she is peeking out from the blindfold. But of course, she's not looking at the wheel. She's not looking at the figures on the wheel. And on this card, we have, again, perhaps the fox, and there is a rabbit, and then the human is down on the ground underneath the wheel. And there's something here too with, I mean, it almost looks like they're falling into the sea, and this particular wheel has been placed at the edge of the sea on a cliff. And that is really interesting, because if you had a Fool card or other ones like that arising, it's kind of alarming. And here it almost looks like, right, this fellow is releasing his wife and his child into the water. Fortune's taken a very drastic turn. Kind of shocking, actually, what we're seeing in these cards. All right, so I want to read to you from the Wheel of Life card, this one. And maybe we can make sense of some of these animals here. Okay. The Wheel of Life is based, and this is from the Buddha Tarot by Robert M. Place, 2004 Llewellyn Tiny Book. The Wheel of Life is based on the vision of death and reincarnation that the Buddha saw while meditating under the Bodhi tree. It tells us that we have earned our fate and that we can improve our fate through the practice of virtue. To practice virtue, we must examine ourselves truthfully and see clearly when our actions are driven by the three poisons: greed, hate, and ignorance, that are depicted as the three animals in the center of the wheel: the cock, the snake, and the pig. When we are achieving success, we must not grow complacent. An asura, the evil titan depicted on the dark side of the card, is always ready to drag us down. And so we have this really interesting correspondence between the asura and the fox. And so it seems to me, in the evolution of all of these cards, through the centuries, similar iconography has been adapted, and it's like it goes in and it comes out, and it goes in and it comes out, much like the wheel turns. I really appreciate this card. Because when we go forward to a card such as this one, we have a lot of symbolism that connects us to wheels and cycles and the web of life and interconnections through alchemy and directions and all kinds of esotericism and zodiacal correspondences. But it's not as in your face as some of the things we are seeing in these cards here. fashion. Yeah, I guess it goes in and out of fashion. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, if when you go through your older decks, which is the one that has the most cards that really sit, and I don't have the answer to this question, I'm just throwing this out there, the most cards that, they're significantly different, and it really gets you to think of the tarot in a more expanded way if you're reading with Waite-Smith inspired or more contemporary decks. And I think that is something that I want to come to, and I need to write this down after the 21st, after we discuss the 21st, the 22nd Arcanum, because we haven't done the Fool yet. And that is exactly to answer that question. What older, let's say, 14th to 18th century tarot deck has contributed to your growth and understanding of these archetypes in a more meaningful way. And I think that will be a great way to conclude this series towards the end of this year. The Golden Dawn couldn't tolerate not knowing, not very clever when dealing with the Wheel of Fortune. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all this, Dee. And those of you that are watching the replay, I look forward to your comments. Have a lovely rest of your day. Take care. Namaste. Thanks, Dee.